I'd like to call the February 7th Wilton Board of Education meeting to order. Has everybody had a chance to review the agenda? Questions, comments? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. As we do at the beginning and end of every meeting, we have an opportunity for public comment. It's an opportunity for people to share their views with the Board of Ed. We allow 2 minutes for every speaker and 15 minutes for every topic. Is there anybody from the public that might like to speak this evening? Please come forward. State your name and address. Just sit right here at the table if you could.
Marissa Albert, 90 Keeler's Ridge.
Hi, Marissa. Thank
How are
for
you?
coming.
Hi, Katie Cunningham, 336 Mountain Road.
Have a seat.
Hi, Kirsten Pearson, 67 Old Farm Road.
Thank you. Welcome.
We just start?
Please let us know what you want to talk about.
My name's Marissa Albert. Thank you for your time tonight. My professional background is accounting and finance, and I'm here to say I object to the full-day proposal for kindergarten. I believe the savings are overstated, and it puts our children and taxpayers at risk. The proposal claims full day will save Wilton $79,000. But is it true? What the administration has told the board about cost savings contradicts what the administration has told parents about how the program will be run. One example. The administration told the board $71,000 of savings comes from cuts in the paraprofessional staff. But a fact sheet given to parents claims that each class will get over 90 minutes more of para time. That would increase costs by over $100,000. If you add paras to a class, doesn't logic hold that it will cost more, not less? Wilton is the only town in Connecticut being told that full day will cost less. The administration's own board presentation references 8 towns that have been considering full day. Without exception, all 8 towns are being told full day will cost more, about $200,000 more for a town the size of Wilton. If the board agrees to a flawed proposal, it could turn out to be a costly mistake for taxpayers and our children. If errors occur in implementation, parents will rightfully demand additional support. If Wilton gets para support comparable to other DRGA towns, like Weston, Easton, or Reading, our costs would jump to $200,000 to $500,000 a year. Keeping extended day does not have to cost more. We've identified an option that could reduce the midday bus cost by $66,000. If the administration works with us, we could demonstrate that a top-quality education does not have to cost taxpayers more. In summary, the administration has admitted there are no long-term academic benefits to full-day kindergarten, and the Common Core standard gap analysis did not call for additional hours. So shouldn't we invest our educational dollars in programs that produce results? I urge the board to reject the full-day proposal for 2013 and that all future full-day proposals be developed with a verifiable cost-benefit analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
My name's Katie Cunningham. I'm a professor in the School of Education at Manhattanville College. I have a doctoral degree from Teachers College at Columbia, where I specialized in curriculum and instruction. I'm also a staff developer and literacy consultant who's hired by school districts to support the best literacy programs they can offer their children. I've also spent the last year and a half writing lesson sets for the publisher Pearson for their series on the Common Core state standards. I believe my qualifications and expertise are justification enough for speaking to the issues presented by the flawed full-day kindergarten proposal. But more importantly, I'm a Wilton parent of 2 preschool-age sons. I am truly at a loss for understanding how the full-day proposal offers Wilton's children a better educational program than the current extended day system. As my letter to the board indicates, I believe the full-day kindergarten would be an irreversible mistake that neglects a full understanding of the educational, social, and emotional needs of 4- and 5-year-old children. As a Common Core curriculum writer, I recognize the pressure schools face in meeting the standards. However, no one has heard from the Wilton administration which specific kindergarten standards require a significant shift in Wilton's educational practices. Most of the Common Core state standards for kindergarten would have been part of the existing program even if they were not Connecticut standards in the past. While I'm doubtful as to which standards are particularly new to Wilton's kindergarten teachers, A more thoughtful response would be to consider what staff development is needed to address specific standards that Wilton teachers need support in. More hours in overcrowded classrooms is not a substitute or improvement on quality teaching and learning. Nowhere in the framework of the Common Core or in the document itself is there indication that more school hours for young children will result in stronger core-era learners. Leading child psychologists and early childhood educators continue to argue that the over-academicization of kindergarten will lead to decreases in vested interest in school for years to come, particularly for boys. In light of the proposed unfounded changes to the kindergarten program, I personally reached out to a fellow researcher, the developmental psychologist Michael Thompson from Harvard, author of The Pressured Child. When questioned about the value of more school hours for kindergartners with a reduction in opportunities for outdoor play, Michael responded to me with the following quote for the public. I am opposed to reductions in playtime as well as to increases in the academic intensity of kindergarten. Both can result in making, in particular, boys hate school, especially developmentally young boys. In addition, educators, pediatricians, developmental psychologists, and researchers continue to argue that interpretation of the K-3 standards will lead to long hours of direct instruction in literacy and math. That didactic instruction will crowd out other crucial areas of young children's learning, that there's little evidence that standards for young children lead to later school success. I urge you to consider the damaging effects the full-day proposal will incur our young children. I urge you to choose energetic, enthusiastic learners over tired, emotional drones, to choose small groupings as they currently exist that nurture over large classes that overwhelm, to choose a logical transition to K through 2 over a possible setup, or likely setup, I should say, for failure, particularly in boys, to choose a balanced approach to early childhood over a panicked, ill-founded reaction to the standards, to choose the start of sustainable lifelong learning over an aversion to school at age 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Kirsten Peterson. I'm a mother of 3, and I stand also before you and ask that you withdraw the proposal for the full-day kindergarten program. I've spent the last month and a half kind of attending various presentations that have been given by the administration, attending finance meetings and various Q&As that have gone on in town. And I still feel, after having gone to all of these, that we still need a proposal pulled. The reasons that I feel as though have been given to go to a full-day program, such as these Common Core standards and the gap that's going on and new requirements put on them. If reading the report, it shows that we actually are, that there isn't an issue in them. Also, the administration has talked about needing more free play for the kids, yet I feel as though no schedule has been given, no specifics have been talked about, which really gets me to the overall feeling as a parent in listening to all this. No specifics, no structure, nothing has been given. I've asked numerous questions, even ranging from how are they going to be dealing with long bus lines and crowded rooms and teachers, and I feel like all they keep saying is we'll figure it out. And as a parent with a child going into this program, it does not leave me feeling confident that the next year's program is going to be a strong one. So I ask, I love our town, and I feel like we have a lot of strong people who believe in our children, and I feel like if we could just come up with a creative way to solve some of maybe the issues that are going on, it would work out best. So,
thank you very much. We appreciate the time you've taken. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. Please.
Hi, my name is Cathy Whelan, and thank you for your time. I am here also because I reject the idea of the full-day kindergarten program. The extended day kindergarten program is an exceptional program. I've had one child go through it and one in it currently. The program respects the needs of small children. It gives children opportunities to grow academically at school, as well as giving them the time and space to grow out of school. Into people with varying interests that aren't necessarily met in school. The literacy component of the program is excellent. The small classes in the afternoon, the additional support from reading specialists twice a week, the explicit instruction in the small group, and the way it gives children opportunities to practice and develop skills. I feel like the best way to ensure a strong foundation of literacy in our children is to provide small classes, a productive learning environment. I feel more is not always better. We have a quality program here. That's the reason my family and I moved to Wilton 2 years ago. So I ask for you not to put the full day program through. Please choose quality in education over quantity of education. Please give our children a strong start in their educational journey and time to grow as people as well as academically. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So my name's Steve Francia. I live at 28 Old Highway, and I actually grew up in Wilton. I was raised here. I had Mr. Cathy as a teacher. I remember Vice Principal Brown, and it was a great education for me. I really went far with it. I'm an executive with a big technology company in Manhattan, and now I'm a father of 4. I moved back here. I've raised my family here, and I've had 2 children already go through. One's at Cider Mill, one's in 2nd grade. I've got a kindergartner right now. One's in 1st grade. I've got a kindergartner right now, and one on the way into the program. And as a father who's seen all this, one thing I think that I like to consider the children first. I think that's what parents should do. I think that's what our community should do, is consider the future. And by looking at our children, we've had our kids, you can ask Mrs. Brown, they're active children. They really are active children. And we found with all of them that when they came home on the long days, they were exhausted. And they didn't have much energy to do much of anything else. And they really thrived from the benefit of being able to have that small time instruction, to be able to, not all the kids are at different levels, being able to cater them and have that personal time, we found was supremely beneficial. And so I ask you to, on the sake of the children, not on the sake of the parents, not on the sake of anything else, but on the sake of the children so they have a good future, please reject this proposal. Let the children be children. Let them have the attention that they need. Let them be able to grow into being children instead of thinking of all these other things. I don't know what the motivation is behind that. I think a lot of the parents are confused behind the motivation from what seemed to us one of the big reasons we chose Wilton over Darien or New Canaan or Westport is because we felt that Wilton education was more progressive. We think extended day is the ideal way to educate the children. And we've heard nothing. We've got friends in the community in these other towns, and all of them say that they wish they had extended day. It feels like we're making a big step backwards with taxpayers' expense and the children's expense. So that's my proposal.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Heather Borden-Hervé. I just wanted to come up here and say, first of all, I wanted to commend all of you and Dr. Richards and the administrators for increasing the communication to parents. I know some people don't feel that it's been enough yet, but I do really appreciate the Facebook page, the emails, especially as the security concerns in the last couple months and the weather concerns. From what I hear from parents, it is tremendously appreciated. I mean, even last week, with the snow day, there was a little kerfuffle there, but I think parents did acknowledge as soon as any kind of communication went back and forth, the interactive part of the communication was really appreciated. And I think that that's one of the biggest lessons to learn through all of this. I mean, I think that that's what you're going to hear from a lot of parents when they're talking about the kindergarten issues or the calendar issues. I think, we talk about the conferences as wanting to be a collaborative process. I think that parents are hopeful that that is what is happening across the board. One of the things that's been really important to me has been the change in the calendar with the conferences. I appreciate that there's been one day given back to the classroom and the emphasis on time in the classroom between the teachers and the students. I would urge the board to consider alternative plans for conferences entirely. I know that there has been a letter to the editor by the head of the teachers union, and that the teachers union as a whole is not supportive of that. And one of the reasons is that it has always been done and it's always worked out. Well, I think that there needs to, as part of that collaboration between the administration and the parents, talk to the parents and see, does that really work for parents? I don't think as parents, we don't want to, there's this sort of perception that we don't want to talk about what's happening with our child in the classroom. We desperately want to. We want to keep the emphasis on the time in the classroom and find ways, alternative ways, to be able to have that conversation with the teachers. And it's possible. My son in 3rd grade had the same teacher from 3rd to 4th grade. She, as a policy, in October, made a conference with both parents out of school hours with every child in the classroom so that she could hear what we as parents wanted her to know about our child coming into her classroom. She was able to meet with every set of parents of every child in her classroom within at most 2 weeks outside of classroom hours. She also met with people again in November when the conferences happened. But it's possible to find alternatives. And I think that having the conversation with parents early on is a really good thing. I also want to, I wanted to speak out at the last budget meeting. I hear a lot of parents who come up to the microphone and say, I have a child in the special education program and I support the budget that goes to special education. I don't have a child in the special education program, but I support the special education budget, and I think it's important for at least somebody in the typical community to speak up and say that. Same teacher who had the conferences, she had a fellowship in sign language, and there was a little girl in the classroom for 2 years who communicated through sign language. By the end of the 2 years, my child was pretty much fluent in classroom sign language. And the way the classroom as a community worked together to help her. The kids learned from one another. They learned from her experience. They were better human beings when they came out of her classroom after 2 years. And I think the kind of time and money that is going to making our program an inclusive one is a really important thing for all of our kids. I have a child who was a typical peer in the preschool, and same thing. She came out of there a better human being. And I think that that's an important consideration, and for you to hear it from somebody who doesn't have a child with special needs. Thank you very much. Thanks for increasing the communication again.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Lisa Mannix. I want to thank all of you, especially Mrs. Jensen-Garner, the administration, and Dr. Richards for providing information sessions on the full-day kindergarten over the last month and a half. I stood up here in November when it was first proposed and had a very emotional response to it as a parent, and also knowing the information I had as an educator, I expressed concerns. I feel like I've given it a really fine chance over the last few months. Unfortunately, missed one of the principal coffee due to a sick child. So I didn't attend every session, but I missed one. I also want to thank the Board of Ed for having a presence at those meetings. I think it's really important to hear all the voices of the parents that can't necessarily make it to these events or maybe haven't expressed it in writing. So thank you for that. I do think that schools and parents working in partnership is critical to our children's well-being and success in kindergarten and beyond. I am still left with a tremendous amount of questions. Mrs. Jensen-Garner has given opportunities to ask them, but some of my questions are questions I've already asked, and I don't feel I've gotten answers that paint a complete picture of what the program would be for our children. As a teacher, I see the merits of some of the points brought up for why full-day kindergarten is important. However, for me, I don't see how those merits outweigh the costs for our youngest learners, especially here in the state of Connecticut, where we have such a wide age range and developmental range. When I look at the program and the sample schedule she's offered, I'm concerned that I see more academics, not just less transitions, but there are literacy activities such as Writer's Workshop and foundations taking place in the afternoon in one of the sample schedules, which really is in contrast to being expressed that majority would happen in the mornings. My list could go on. I'm really concerned that as a district, perhaps as a state, and definitely as a country, we're so worried about competing for the best numbers that we're losing sight of what will best nurture children's growth and interest in being lifelong learners. Like so many in this town, we did move here for the schools. I ask you to consider that Wilton can put itself on the map for truly being one of the best, or perhaps the best, school in Connecticut by still attaining the benchmarks set forth by the core curriculum standards, Common Core standards, without putting a program in place that takes away the smaller, nurturing classroom environment that we currently have in our kindergarten classrooms. I don't believe that we can compare ourselves to all the towns around us that have neighborhood schools. We have a very large model with a K-2 school, and I think there are other very successful districts in our country with similar models. But I ask that we focus our attention first on making sure that that's successful. Please consider having our fine staff and administrators take additional time to refine this program before considering it. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to come up and speak?
Come on, can you give me cake? I don't know if I really should state my name. I don't like to say it out loud. You all know who I am. Congratulations, Gary. You know I love you. It's a nice honor to have in our district. I don't have a comment on kindergarten, so I was just going to wait till everyone had their comment. I had a comment on the calendar. I have a real concern about losing February break. I have 2 high schoolers, and the amount of stress that these kids come out of Christmas break, cramming for midterms for 3 weeks, February break gives them a relief to take a deep breath. And I have a senior this year, and seeing that college process and the freaking out of every time you check the mail, does it come, does it come, does it come? February break, I think, would be a real hard hit for those kids. I think you have a lot of kids that can handle it. It's also a big time for a lot of us parents to take a vacation. I know it's really not, big deal, but if you have kids that play a spring sport, they're already in full swing and expected to be here. So, like, for my family, February is the only time of year we get a break. Having a restaurant, I don't get a vacation during the summer. So, but I am truly concerned with the stress level of those kids losing that downtime. I appreciate the 3-day weekend at least, but I just don't feel like coming out of midterms when we do gives the kids enough of a downtime to kind of regroup with the new semester starting to finish out the year strong. It puts us all the way into April for a true vacation for them. So as a parent, there's my spiel. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to come up and speak? Seeing none, I'd like to remind everybody that we have a comment section at the end of each of our meetings, and also there's an opportunity to speak to us via email. Those of you who have contacted us via email, hopefully you've noticed that we do actually read those and take those emails into consideration. At this point, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Everybody had an opportunity to take a look at that? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I would like to again thank everybody who's participated in the process of sharing their insights and perspective with us. It truly does help us run our schools more effectively. Whether it be by the emails we've received or standing up to speak or ask questions at any of our public forums, it all counts and it all resonates with us. We're in the midst of a challenging budget season. I would like to ask everyone to reserve judgment on the percentage increase we are looking at, and instead look at our town and look at our neighboring towns and ask ourselves, are our schools giving our families what we need, and are we on the path to delivering better results and more reasonable budgets than those around us? I recognize we may not be where we want to be in some areas, but we are definitely moving in the right direction. Please take the time to reflect on that movement and give our schools and administration the support they need to do their jobs for all of us. Our next meeting after tonight is with the Board of Finance. It's next Monday night in this room at 7:30. They've given all town disciplines budget guidance of increases of no more than 1.75%. It is important that you take time to understand how this number was determined, and what guidance this means. And it is equally important that you share your views with the Board of Finance, because they too seek input in making their decisions, just like we do. They can be reached by email at boardoffinance@wiltonct.org. Thank you, Dr. Richards.
Thank you. Good evening. I have 3 items. Excuse me. First, I received word from one of our AP environmental science teachers, Jim Hunter. It was information about a conference that's going to be held at Wilton High School. The Wilton High School Organic Garden, as you know, we have an organic garden that during the summer months and fall provides some produce for our cafeteria and also for the community. But the organic garden has teamed up with a group called CTNOFA. It's a Northeastern Organic Farmers Association. Hold their annual winter conference here at the high school on Saturday, March 2nd. This is the first time this conference is being held here in Fairfield County. And Jim believes that there'll be some 500 people in attendance. It's open to the public. I have information of a brochure I received via email that talks about the 50-plus workshops, cooking demos, and so on. And should be an interesting, the workshops range from beginning gardening, something we could all learn from, I guess, to something I have no aspirations for personally, but backyard chicken raising. I have backyard deer raising, perhaps, but raising GMO foods, and I'm looking for guidance as to what GMO foods mean.
Genetically modified.
Okay. I promised Jim I would make that, don't kill the messenger here. The second, I received word regarding the Wilton High School academic team. The Wilton High students Dominic Schaefers, Jeremy Brewer, Philip Sieper, and Peter Jensen won first place in the Regional Academic World Quest competition at UConn-Stanford on February 2nd, sponsored by the World Affairs Forum, which, as you know, is a group whose mission is to expand understanding of global affairs and America's role around the world. As this year's winners for the 4th year in a row, the Wilton students, together with their academic advisor, Terry Ragazzini, will travel to Washington, D.C. to take part in the World Affairs Councils of America's National Academic World Quest on April 27th. 14 teams competed from Westchester and Fairfield County High Schools in the regional competition that our team won. AITE, Academy of Information Technology and Engineering, placed second, and Darien High School placed third, which gives me great pleasure. But having had 3 warrior daughters that competed against Darien. Finally, we received a word on the National Merit finalists. Wilton High School is pleased to announce that 8 Wilton High School seniors, Caroline Armstrong, Michelle Singuina, Brian Crampton, Peter Jensen, Daniel Riker, Ramamurthy Siri Puram, Paige Wallace, and Brian Way have met all requirements to advance to finalists in the National Merit Scholarship. We had 8 semifinalists, and all 8 of these young people went on to be finalists. About 15,000 finalists have been identified across the country from the 16,000 students who were named semifinalists in September. To become a finalist, the semifinalists must submit a detailed scholarship application, which includes evidence of academic record of high performance, endorsement by the school principal, SAT scores that confirm the student's earlier qualifying test performance, a self-descriptive essay, and evidence of the student's participation and leadership in the school and community activities. Again, these students are now eligible for National Merit Scholarships, which are announced in the spring. So we're really proud of our 8 seniors for having achieved this recognition.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Committee reports. Do we have any committee reports this evening? What's that?
I can report. With respect to the restroom renovation building committee, we have received the conceptual schematic plans. We met this afternoon. We reviewed those plans, and we got some costing information on the various options. We've authorized the architects to begin the building construction documents. Those are expected, I think it's the 21st of March is the deadline for that. We do have some issues that we need to talk about at the town level at the Facility Steering Committee. And we will be doing, John Murphy and I will take those issues to that body on Wednesday. But it's moving along on time.
Wonderful. And the funds to build that were approved last year, correct?
Yes, there was $1.47 million approved by the voters last year for that project.
Does it appear as though that number is still accurate?
No.
Okay. You can assume it's not too much.
That's what we're going to talk about on Wednesday.
Any other committee reports?
Yes, we have the Technology Advisory Committee met, and we had a very good presentation, detailed presentation on the fiber optic project, which was very good, and Matt's begun planning on the Tech Expo, so that's going to be pretty exciting this year. And then also the OPEB and pension trustees met and reviewed the investment results, all as well, and no changes were made to the allocations.
Wonderful. Do we have a date for Tech Expo yet?
We're looking at April 3rd.
April 3rd, Tech
We have
Expo.
not
Potentially.
finalized,
Okay.
but if we want to save the date out there.
Wonderful. For those of you who have not been to that in the past, it's a wonderful event. It's definitely worth getting to, even if you don't have kids in that school.
We're showcasing Miller Driscoll this year.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Any other committee reports? Seeing none, we'd like to discuss full-day, everyday kindergarten with Dr. Richards and Mrs. Jensen-Gerner. It's on the agenda for review and discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Likely. Tonight, we are pleased to have Principal Cheryl Gerner, her assistant principals, Sheila Brown and Leslie Pearson, and teachers Cindy Lyon, Noreen Corcoran, Marianne Mugin, I believe Cindy Lyon, so if I've left anybody out. And Sue Schroeder, I'm sorry. And we're going to ask them to come forward to share some additional information about our proposal for an all-day, everyday kindergarten program. We have, as you know, moved through the process and bringing this proposal forward for the board's consideration. A presentation that Cheryl made in November. As was mentioned tonight, various parent information sessions, website information, meetings with parent groups, and tonight's presentation. Cheryl, as you know, has worked extensively with the Miller Driscoll leadership team and kindergarten teachers to develop a recommended implementation model for this program change. As you will see and have seen, it includes recommended increases in some instructional time in literacy and mathematics, as well as some opportunities for structured play within the day. The staffing recommendations that are related to this proposal, we believe, will impact positively instruction for all students. And as also was mentioned, we are virtually the only DRG A-town. Westport, I believe, has 4 days, full days a week that has not moved to this approach to kindergarten instruction. And we believe that we will share information with the board and the public tonight about what we have learned from our research with these communities and their experiences with the Everyday All Day program and the positive impacts that they have seen in their students. So again, the purpose of tonight's program is to provide the board with a summary of a plan, some additional information. I'd ask Cheryl and her team at this time to come forward and present. Welcome.
Somebody counted ahead of time.
Sorry, Sue.
That's okay. Oops.
Hello. Thank you so much for the amount of time you've put into this so far. We know that there's been a lot of emails back and forth across the board about Alias that have been shared with you, so we look forward to this.
Thank you.
Our presentation, what we're going to do tonight is to make a short presentation that we have on the PowerPoint that will kind of outline the process thus far and what we have done thus far. And I think the major part of our presentation, we hope to have our teachers be able to respond and talk about some of the things that we have done and seen from the time that we presented this in November to the present. As Gary had said, if you go back just 1 minute, Leslie, as Dr. Richards had said, I wanted to just have this slide up for just a minute because one of the things that we want to know is that we have 3 kindergarten teachers that are representative of our kindergarten team. We also have Susan Schroeder, who is an instructional leader in our reading department and as representative of our reading department, and of course those of us that are administrators. So as we go forward, we wanted to kind of review where we've been and where we're going. The timeline from November to the present has been, as we had indicated at that time, our plan was that we would have meetings with kindergarten teachers, we would do school visitations, we would have opportunities to have parent meetings to explain and to discuss the things that we were doing. And so I think one of the most powerful things that we've seen, and it will become more apparent later in the presentation, is about what we were, the research that we did in seeing other districts. We don't believe that we have to replicate totally any other district, but we were able to see what they're doing with full-day kindergarten and how they're making that work and what we could see students being able to do. We were very fortunate that each one of the districts listed there could not have been more professionally open to us. We had the opportunity to be in classrooms, to talk to children, to talk to the teachers, to talk to the administrators, and to be able to see live what was going on. We visited Darien, New Canaan, Ridgefield, Weston, Easton, and we took teams of teachers and administrators each time. Then other things that we've done, we've met with the kindergarten teachers to lay this out on what this would be, to take their questions, to consider concerns and consider where we go from here. And then we did mail out information that said we were going to be doing this. We had that we were doing this presentation and the possibility of these kinds of things happening. We did parent presentations, as was already indicated. I understand that this is difficult to see. I tried to enlarge it beforehand. So one of the things that I want to talk about on this, I thought it would enlarge. It's
Can I show you?
no way to enlarge it anymore. Actually, I can give you some of these. I actually made a couple extra copies, so here's one.
Oh, very good.
Oh, good.
Never mind.
So if I fill up enough time by passing things out, Matt will figure it out in the meantime. Thank you, Matt. So the purpose of this slide is one of the things that comes up when you're talking about implementing a new program is how is that going to look different? And so this was a comparison, and it's a sample model of what would be different from a full day compared to our current extended day. So if where we would work from is at the top left. So this is just a sample, so please understand it's for illustration purposes, but it nails down the kinds of things that we would be looking at. So for instance, 9:05 to 9:30 would be a morning meeting time in the full-day kindergarten. One of the things that teachers will talk a little bit about is how powerful that time of the day is for community building, for building transitions, for preparing your class every single day so that they're prepared to do the day. Currently, the average time that we have to be able to do that in the 2 days is around 20 minutes, and in the 3 days is around 15 minutes. One of the things that happens with our current schedule is because the day often starts with specials it isn't an optimum time to really start the day. So they don't always get to start the day that way. They do something else and then they have to come back to it. So it's more about morning routines right now rather than a real morning meeting time, which for community building, for really reaching the child, that's that 4 and 5 child coming into 4 and 5-year-old child coming into kindergarten, we feel that's important. From 9:30 to 10:30 would be a literacy time. Now, literacy could be shared reading, guided reading, independent reading. It could even be you swap and you do a writing block. But for illustration purposes, that's a literacy time. That's 60 minutes. We feel very strongly that a full-day kindergarten, that kindergarten should have that opportunity to do 60 minutes of concentrated literacy activities, and there are a variety of activities. As I said, those are listed, and we'll entertain other questions if you have those. Currently, we have around 50 minutes. The issue that we see now is that's very broken up. It might be 15 minutes in the morning, and then we have a half an hour in the afternoon. That is that guided reading, small group time for reading and writing. So that's a broken up time. It's 2 days a week that they have that. 3 days a week they don't have that small group time. They have a short, around 25 minutes. 10:30 to 10:50, snack and recess. We would propose that would be 20 minutes. And currently it's about 20 minutes in a 2-day, and it's about 15 minutes in a 3-day. Another important piece that we see is the math. As you're very well aware, we implemented a new math program it was a K-8 endeavor this past year. Kindergarten is in full implementation. We were very fortunate. We've had staff development on that. One of the things that we find is with our current program, we're able to do 20 to 30 minutes of instruction, and to fully implement that to its best extent, the program recommends that it's 45 minutes daily. And currently that does not happen in our current program. 11:15 to 12 o'clock, that's a social studies, and it's a writing time, and you can see how we divided that out. And then there's a 15-minute, now there are transitions, at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, but there's a very noted transition in the extended day program. As the children leave for their long day, short day, they have to have a fair amount of time to have a transition to divide those children up into those 3 different kinds of groups. So they're going to have those 18, 19, 20 kids that they have in the morning. Then they have to take the time that they're going to write currently now. They divide them into the kids that are going home on the bus, the kids that are going home that are pickup, the kids that are staying that are lunch, and the kids that are staying that are recess. So it's a big chunk of time. Then there's lunch on the days that they have a long day, and currently they have that lunch, and we would propose they'd have the same lunch we did. We would propose that with the long day, when they return from lunch, they'd have a read aloud rest time. And currently they have that when they have their long day. And they have a short read aloud time in the shorter day. From 1 to 1:25, we show foundations, and that's pretty typically what we're doing now. And foundations would be a combination of being able to do phonics, word work, and it's the handwriting. It's a program. Then writer's workshop. That's another time to go back to writing, and it's 30 minutes daily. And it is very important to us that the children have the opportunity to do daily writing. And we don't have that consistent daily opportunity at this time. Then we look at specials, and we think this is another important piece of considering the whole child and the age of the children and the developmentally appropriate age of the children, that the afternoon is a more appropriate time for their specials. So we have that across the board for the long day, or for the full day. And then we feel the end of the day should be a structured opportunity for structured play centers and an extension time, that there's about 45 minutes there that the children would have the opportunity to extend the things that they've done throughout the day. We feel that this is a nice mix of academic kinds of things, downtime, considering the age of the children, giving them opportunities to do the things that they need to do, including play, and giving them an opportunity every day to have that structured play. So, again, that's a sample schedule, and as we move on, if you want to ask questions about it, we'd be happy to take those as well. I think I'll just keep going forward, and if you want to go back, you're welcome to ask anything. The next one, if you could enlarge that as well, Matt, because that is teeny on that screen. Oh, that's you can see better. Maybe it's the distance thing.
Wait, Cheryl, before you go, why aren't these all zeros, though, since this is the short day?
I knew that. What happens is it doesn't line up exactly.
Okay.
Because think about it as on the left, that's the actual schedule. On the right, you can't have the actual schedule because you have a short day and a long day, and you can't mix these. So it's just comparison of the content. So on the right, it's not the time of day; it's the content and the amount of time. So that's
so all of this is kind of
it would be all squished into the morning. Yes, but and for comparison purposes, you have to see it along side by side.
All right.
So the time of day refers to the full day program.
Right. Gotcha.
So, and that's why I tried to separate it over there, move it over. So Matt came forth again and fixed this for me. This is one of the things that in our proposal, as well as a full-day kindergarten, is with our whole programmatic support for our K-1-2. One of the things that, and we don't have to go into the detail of all of the 1-2 right now because we're talking about kindergarten, but what this shows is that we recognize that children need opportunities for small group, large group, and individual work, particularly in the areas of literacy. And in our proposal, this gives 90 minutes of support to every single classroom, every single kindergarten teacher on a consistent basis every day. So you will see the yellow at the top. It says, it just shows you for illustration purposes. There would be 7 paras that would work in 7 rooms, and then those 7 paras would go to the next rooms, and you would have an hour of assistance for each of those rooms. You'd see that would return again in the afternoon, where you see the yellow again, 1:30 to 2. It shows the writer's workshop time. And that, again, is 30 minutes of paraprofessional support to the kindergarten. So it would be dedicating 90 minutes to the literacy time so that with those children they'd have the opportunity to do small group instruction. The teacher could do instruction, the paraprofessional could help in whatever the way the teacher thought that needed to help. Currently, we're using that model in 1st and 2nd grade. Then the other thing we were able to do is to take a look at the yellow at the bottom. You see Monday through Friday, Reading Teacher 1, Kindergarten 1. This model also shows that we are able to do reading support to each of the kindergarten classes from a reading teacher, and it would be more of an extension time in the afternoon. And so each classroom would be able to have 15 minutes of a reading teacher in their classroom every day in the afternoon during that extension time. So we look at that the kindergarten support would be 90 minutes of paraprofessional each day and 15 minutes of a reading teacher each day to assist the teachers and the students in the things that needed to occur for literacy.
Cheryl, so every day 2:30 to 2:45 is para, small group with a paraprofessional, immediately followed by reading teacher.
1:30 is, just take yellow pieces. So in there, in the yellow, if you look at the other schedule where it showed the writer's workshop at 1:30 to 2, that would be with a paraprofessional. Then the class goes to specials. Then when they come back to, in this schedule, then when they come back, they would be in that structured play in the centers time, and then there's an enrichment time in there. And that enrichment, and that block of time, that 45 minutes, that reading teacher would be available working with the teacher or students as needed.
Thank you.
And currently, that's what's happening in the afternoon and the 2 long days. But it would be each day because they would have
Okay.
5 days. And then, so we don't have to go too far into the weeds on this, but we can go back to it later on. The blue is just representative of reading teachers in the reading teacher part of the model, and the red is for second grade with reading teacher with this part of the model. It just shows how we would offer support across the building for all literacy in all grades. But for our demonstration purposes today, it's kindergarten that we're talking about for right now. One of the things that we talked about was that we researched a variety of kinds of things. We recognize that national research that compares, and there's a lot of research out there, and we've put a lot of it online. Most of it, if you go back to the page before, Leslie, most of it compares half day to full day. We recognize that. So there are some limitations in the research, but one of the things that's very compelling with all of that research, whether it's half day, extended day, whatever they would compare full day to, the things that you can do that are takeaways, that are benefits of full day regardless, is that it's quality instructional time and it's consistent instruction. That it's child-centered, a balanced program where we can, and we feel very strongly that we want to balance that academic, social, emotional play. Fewer major transitions, more time for intervention and enrichment, opportunities to build stamina and an independence, and I believe one of the teachers will talk about that, and more opportunities to be a community of learners. One of the things we really build in the foundation of our kindergarten students is right from the very beginning, to be a community of learners, to have that stamina, have that independence, but the consistency of a full day program allows more opportunities to make that happen. And then just a couple other things. The Children's Defense Fund, comes out of the Full Day Kindergarten position paper about Connecticut, and it says that full day kindergarten is a necessary component of a comprehensive early learning continuum and boosts children's cognitive learning, creative problem solving, and social competence. And I read that as a quote because it was a quote. Position paper statement, and I referenced this in November when I brought this up, that Ready by 5 and Fine by 9 is a document that the state has developed. It's all about early childhood, and the primary thing that it says is that you should have children ready to go to kindergarten, and that's the whole thing about preschool, but that everything in research says that you want a child to be able to read strongly by 3rd grade, because the more they are not doing that, the longer it takes to remediate after that time. And so we feel very strongly as a K-2 school that is very much our mission, is to make sure that those children are solid when they go to 3rd grade as much as possible. One of the research things that we thought, it's hands-on active research, was our impressions and our faculty visits to those districts that I mentioned before. Noreen has worked in a full-day program, so she'll speak a little bit about that. We've also had, we have in-the-field consultants from Teachers College at Columbia, Ginny Lockwood, who we've been able to speak to, and we'll be doing some professional development with us. Jen Cervello is currently doing staff development with our 2nd grade in the Readers Workshop. She's also working with the 3rd through 5th grade in the Readers Workshop. And if we move on to the next page, Jen Cervello has comments about the advantages of full-day kindergarten. We just bullet-pointed some of her things that she wrote and a white paper for that. Is that our nation's new expectations will not be achieved without the time and consistency of a full-day kindergarten that provides time for play, time for content area work,
We can make it larger.
provide a balanced literacy program. The volume of reading and writing directly relates to, I could see it on my own sheet there probably, but thank you, to achievement. And then at the end of the year expectations, it used to be that there was a level B was the expectation for end of year kindergarten, and it's recommended to be a level D or E in order to be ready for 1st grade. Thank you. And then this is a data point from our building. This just shows that before I had mentioned that one of our key components that we really want to do is we want to prevent reading difficulties. We want to make sure that we aren't remediating everything, that we are able to really give a strong foundation. Currently, this shows that the percent of students that were at the level D entering first and second grade and third grade, because we took it up to third grade. We had 79% of the children that were meeting benchmark, 80%, 75%. But at the bottom, and it doesn't add up equally, so you'll see this because there are some things about it's the amount of kids and that sort of thing. But about 18% of our kids are not are receiving intervention in kindergarten, about 21% in second grade or in first grade, 21% in second grade, and 19% in third grade. We really think that if we had a full-day kindergarten and we shored up some of the other things, that we would have fewer interventions. Because again, the more you don't have to remediate, the more you can prevent rather than intervene. It makes for stronger reading children. In the next slide, this is a comparison just to show us that if we took the same group of kids and we had to reach the benchmark that I just mentioned, that is an increased benchmark, that we'd only have 62% of our students that made that a benchmark, that we would only have 65% of our children make that benchmark, and that we'd only have 75% of our kids make the benchmark. So we're doing a great job in remediating, but we feel like we should do less intervening and more preventing. And then we're towards the end. Well, we're almost at the end of the. We're at the end of the slides, but this is examples from our teachers of why they feel that kindergarten is best for kids. So they just have a couple statements, and then we will open this to questions.
Again, I've always taught full-day kindergarten before coming to this district, and when you teach full-day kindergarten, you really do have the time to develop those school routines and behaviors that are so important, especially in kindergarten and especially in the first few months of school. And you have the consistency to do so. And that also ties into the community part, the community building in kindergarten. That is so important.
Yeah, as Cheryl showed with the morning meeting and the routines, I mean, I think all the teachers do the best that they can with their schedules and with their children. But if we could have the specials later on in the day, which the full day would open up for, because we could have them in the afternoon, we could have a solid morning meeting and format the children in the way that would be necessary to run a full-day kindergarten and help with the community building. I think it would help in the morning, and I think the anxiety and the division that the long and short day cause with, the children, even at this time of year, it's confusing, and the children that stay on alternate long days really don't have the opportunity to take advantage of each other in a learning relationship or to build friendships, because the morning is super scheduled, and unless they're on the long day with, if the whole class is together, they can bond together. But as it is, it's sort of split. So.
And I've done this program for many years, and I think I was there almost right after it began as an extended day. And at the time, it was just for enrichment. So we have come a long way, and many things have changed in our curriculum, and kindergarten has changed. And I find that teaching reading and writing in the afternoon is a struggle. I don't think it's the best time to teach children to read and write. And on Fridays, sometimes their heads are. It's just, to me, I'm frustrated from that, because I'm frustrated with that, because I feel that if we had a consistent approach in the morning, it would be better. They'd retain more. They're all on the same page, sort of, but the routines are so important for kindergartners. And I think that the afternoon could be more beneficially used in another way. I feel my morning is rushed, and the things that I used to really love about kindergarten, that making connections and higher level thinking, I don't have time for that anymore. It's like, okay, now we have to go here. All right, now put that away. So I'm looking forward to a smoother, quiet, smoother moving day that doesn't require so many choppy things happening. And I think that we all feel, as we talked, all of us kindergarten teachers, we're very frustrated with all we have to do in a short amount of time with a whole class in the morning, and not too happy about such an academic time in the afternoon for such important subjects as reading and writing. So.
I think we all agree as well that the issue of support is crucial. As I said, I've always taught full-day kindergarten, but I always had a full-time assistant. And Mrs. Jensen-Gerner is talking about 90 minutes, and that would be wonderful. We really would like the support.
Yes.
And we really feel that it's a need.
That was critical to all of us when we talked about full-day kindergarten. So,
and it evolved from, where we chose the children that would stay Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday in groups that would work best together. And in a way, you can't predict how the whole year will go. But now it's more of something that's convenient for the parent, and sometimes we can't even balance a boy-girl group the way we would have liked to. So I think with everyone there the whole day, the kids will just build, it will be more important, and they will build a community with each other and have opportunities for extended friendships.
And I think the social piece, we want the best for these children. I know a parent spoke about thinking of the children. I think we are. And I think that this program right now isn't as good as it used to be. I think the extended day is great. Who can argue that 10 children are great, but 10 children doing reading and writing all the time in the afternoon, I think has not been, to me, the optimum way to use the time with them. Yeah. So that's pretty much the feeling of all the kindergarten teachers.
I think one other thing that maybe we'll just add momentarily and then open for questions is that each of us was able to visit other districts, and each of us saw different takeaways. I think we were all very impressed by what we saw. I would back up by saying as well that we have a fantastic team of kindergarten teachers. They're veteran, they're dedicated, they think of the students all the time. They do a great job, and as somebody mentioned, is they work very hard for the kinds of things that they're doing, and I think they do a great job. So I wouldn't want anybody to think that some of the things that we had said that we see it as a failure. We don't. We don't even see the extended school day as a failure. We see that life has moved on, kindergarten has moved on, expectations have moved on, and we want to do the best for our students, and we feel that this is just a better model.
If I could just add, I think we feel that the nation's expectations have changed, and as the teachers talk about how frenetic the morning is to get everything done, now with the new Common Core State Standards, without the ability to have a full day, 5-day consistent program, it'll be even that much more difficult for the teachers to meet the new expectations.
But I think we also have to let everyone know that everything is taught in a developmentally appropriate way. Just because there's more time for academics, they have manipulatives, they'll be doing kids' writing, they'll be sharing their writing. There will be a lot more time for interaction and revisiting things that they do. So we always kind of mask the work as play for them. It's not going to be that they're sitting at their desk all day.
Nose to the pencil in hand, nose to the grindstone. They understand 5-year-olds.
So, questions?
I have a question. Mrs. Mugen said that the afternoon is not the best time to teach reading and writing.
Well, that's pretty much our...
Right.
Without a break.
Without a break. We're there working all afternoon
from 1:30 to 3.
Yet the schedule that's been proposed has 25 minutes of foundations and 30 minutes of writing workshop in the afternoon. It seems to be a contradiction.
Just refine that a little bit. We were doing reading and writing at the same time. So we couldn't do writing really well, and we couldn't really do reading well, and it was kind of stressful for children to be doing both. Having a piece of it, I think, in the afternoon. That's a slower pace than this mad rush to do it all.
And to have the 30 minutes of the
aid
aid
time to help.
Yes.
And again, that's a sample schedule. There could be a special in the afternoon for you, but to have a half hour of aid time and 15 minutes with a reading specialist during that time is already giving us a half hour, more aid time.
I think the other piece is that it's also a revisit, because if you can divide that up, so let's say 90 minutes of reading in the morning, you spread that out, and then you're going back to it again in the afternoon. So the writing may be started in the morning and revisited in the afternoon, so it's more spread out.
And maybe the instruction piece would be in the morning, and you continue the writing in the afternoon too. Instead of trying to instruct the writing and then them doing it, and then calling over guided reading groups at the same time. It's been hard for us to fit. I think we do a really good job with it, with what we're doing, but I don't. I think this would be a more optimal.
And they
way to
also,
use time.
And they also ask, "Can I finish this later?" And if it's not their long day, the next day they forget about it, and the value is lost. So it's so nice to say, set it aside. You can finish it after lunch.
Noreen, you said that you had taught full day before, and you always had an aide. Was that like all day
Yes.
you had an aide in the classroom?
Yes.
Now, what are your thoughts about, and I'm asking all three of you, now in this model you would get 90 minutes of a para and 15 minutes of a reading teacher. I mean, is that sufficient to you? Or if you had a magic wand, would you have that aide all day? Or what's your idea? Gary, get your magic wand out.
It's like, you want cake every day?
And if you had 3, would you like that?
But that's obviously a concern we're hearing from the parents as well. So maybe you can speak to that, and how do we make this work? And I mean, do we bring in more parent volunteers? I mean, how do we make this work?
Well, I think the morning routine and the extra time to teach self-help skills and go very slowly and do it in an age-appropriate way. And Cheryl has said at the beginning of the year we would have helpers with the buses and the coats and the bathrooms and things that are
We
always
already
a
do
little unusual at the beginning of the year. So I think we just have to take it very slowly.
What we did see at our other district visitations was an implementation of a full day, full 20 children in the class, without sometimes any paraprofessional or paraprofessional maybe for a half hour out of a 60-minute literacy block. And we didn't see chaos, we didn't see, frenetic. We saw children happy, calm, working, one teacher directing, then the children working independently, teacher conferring, small group. And the reason the teacher was able to create that type of a community environment was because of the ability to develop and teach children in a gradual release model that with time to be able to do that, the teachers will be able to do. I mean, when they have their long day, it's not, a frenetic classroom. In the morning when they do have, 20 children in their class. So it's the opportunity to have staff development that we would like to provide, but for the teachers to see how literacy can be provided throughout the day in a balanced approach that does not, you don't lose the value of play, you do not lose the value of the content area development to build background knowledge. All of it can be provided with more time. It just takes time for this to all happen. With respect to the number of paras in the classroom, you have a model here where you're using 7 paras. When I go to my budget book and I look at it, I see 1.75 general ed paras, 4 language arts paras, a science para, 1.2 reading center paras. I can't make it add up to 7. Where are these people going to come from?
We already have 10.69 in FTE that are reading and language arts paras. So we reduced that to 7.0. And it's language arts, it's 2 are from Title I, I think, They're from different areas. But the other thing is the science paras are not part of that. So there's a 1.0 science para in there, which is actually, there are 2 individuals right now, and they're at 0.5. There's a language, there is a, in the budget there is also, and it's what we've had before, there's a 1.0 library para. That didn't change. That's not part of this mix. So what it was the 10.69 that we had that were dedicated to language arts, reading, and core aids. We took the core aids and didn't make them core aids. We took that 10.69 FTE and made it 7.0
Could you speak
FTE.
up, please? I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
I realize you're talking to them, but
I'm sorry. I tried to turn this way a little bit, but then I turned again.
We need a sound field.
So you were saying you took a 10.69 currently.
Yes, that's FTE though. So there
They're
was
full-time.
there were in the budget now we have 5 paras that are at a 0.87 that were core aids.
Okay.
We also have currently 4 reading paras that are 1.0s. And we have 2 paras that are 0.6s. 2 that are 0.5. We have a range. It's the right now it ends up to be 10.69 FTE.
Okay.
And so we've traded that out for 7 full-time. No 0.86s or 7s, no 0.6s, and none of those are 0.5s. Then we also have in there 2 individuals that are 0.5.
Okay, so 7 that are 1.0s.
But 7 that are part of this, yes.
And 2 that are 0.5.
So our total paraprofessional support would be 1.0 science, 1.0 language or library media, 2 that are 0.5 that are paraprofessional support for intervention, and then the 7.0 that would be in the reading language arts.
Okay, I'm still not seeing it, but
Can you speak a little bit about any training that those paras get in reading language arts?
Sure. I'd be happy
Susan,
to.
would you
Yes.
like-
She helps provide the training.
Susan does the training.
We train our paras every year, and the paras that we have right now are in 1st and 2nd grade, so they have been instructed on how to teach reading. And if you went into a 1st grade classroom now, you would see a teacher with her guided reading group, and you would see a para working with a group. So they have been instructed very well.
Many of our paras have been with us for quite some time. Every year we add strategies, we add professional development for them, and many of them are actually certified teachers that prefer being paraprofessionals. So they're highly trained.
What's the difference between a reading para and a reading specialist then? How do you?
Many years of education. No, and experience. I mean, but many of our paras do have 4-year education.
They have certification as teachers.
Right.
The reading specialists are certified as reading specialists. They have a master's beyond that.
Thank you.
And I think one advantage, too, is that they know where the reading is going. So when they come to us, they know, they're familiar with the program, and they know what's ahead.
I was surprised to hear about the anxiety and division among child groups in looking at the kids that are half days one.
Yeah. Are you a long day today? Am I a long day today? No,
Yes.
you're a long day Tuesday, Thursday.
Are we doing the same thing as the Wednesday, Friday children? I want to do that too. I mean, there is.
My favorite is it my long day?
Right.
especially
is
when
it my
lunch is
short
pizza.
Can I
Say today, do they want it to be their long day, or do they want
They don't know.
I don't think
they don't know?
I just
Right.
don't think that it's just.
It's a lettered bus or a numbered bus. They either
Right.
go outside with
But
the
they all
buses
can
or
use
they're in the
iPhones.
classroom.
They all
We've heard a lot about these little tykes being exhausted when they come home from their long days. How is that not going to happen? 5 days a week.
I would like to just talk about a little bit about my experience. And I am a mother, and I know that children are tired after a long day of school, a full day of school. In my experience, and this is my 10th year as a teacher, yes, for the first 3 weeks, they ask you, most of them will ask you every day, are we gonna nap? Can I put my head down? They're very tired. They do build stamina, and by the 6th week of school, I usually don't get asked again. And now I know cases are different for every child, but remember, we're also extending the day to slow down in a sense and to pull in a lot of the community building and structured play, which is really working on not only stamina but how to treat each other in a social setting. And so in my experience, they really do rise above it in a way, and they grow their own stamina. I don't know how else to put it.
But the structured play seems to be at the end of the day, and only at the end of the day, in the sample schedule that you gave us. And so that means that what used to be the morning center time is no longer there, and that always was a good opportunity for parents to come in and see what was going on in the classroom. What sort of parent opportunities are there going to be in the classroom?
They writers' workshops. Some of them have parents that go in for writers' workshop. Teachers could talk more about
Well,
that.
and center time, we'll still ask parents to come in and volunteer for the center time. It just will be a different time of the day. Because we really appreciate their help.
Absolutely. One of the schools that we went and looked at in Darien, the teachers had, or one of the classes had parents in to help with their word study, which I thought was a great opportunity to have them in and help with that. So, I mean, there's definitely times.
Different times for...
Right.
And that's up to the individual teachers.
Right.
So
Right.
Everyone has his or her style.
Some of them, some of them really like him in there for writers' workshop. Some of them don't like them in there for centers. They'd rather have writers' workshop, different kinds of things. I would say all kindergarten teachers provide opportunities for teachers to be in there, parents to be in there in different manners, because they recognize that that's a really important piece of that partnership.
And structured play actually, in my opinion, is an excellent time to have parents come in and volunteer. The nature of structured play is, it's very useful to have an adult to facilitate positive peer interaction. And so that would be, I think, a lovely time. But again, that's left up to the teacher.
My concern, though, is that the structured play really is at the end of the day. The kids are going to put in 5 hours and 40 minutes before they get any structured play. And that's a pretty heavy day for a 5-year-old with all of the academics and before any structured play.
They do have their snack and recess, and they do have lunch recess every day. So they do have lunch recess in that schedule. It's at 12 or 12:30.
And that's about 40 minutes, all right?
40 minutes for lunch and recess.
And then that moves
20 minutes each.
20 minutes each, yes.
And then it moves to read aloud / rest. So there's kind of a whole hour there of combination of recess, read aloud, and lunch.
And realize, too, that it's a sample schedule. No kindergarten teacher would have 60 minutes of reading straight away at the beginning of the year. They would have reading activities. They might have a shared reading. They might have a read aloud. They might get up and take a movement activity. They might do some other things. So it's very much being able to be facilitated during the day. So even math, you're not going to do 45 minutes straight away of math and not in the beginning. That's a combination of large group, small group, individual. So all of those are different opportunities, too, to structure those kinds of things. It's structured interaction. It's not a structured play, but it is a structure of different kinds of interactions.
I think we work hard to balance that. Whole group, small group, movement, so that everybody is feeling comfortable.
And you're building that stamina, the reading muscles, the math, you're building all of that.
In Sutter Mill, I recall, I know it's happening now with my youngest daughter, but with my oldest daughter, two teachers would get together, and one would teach social studies, and another one would teach science. I'm looking at the writer's workshop, which is a half an hour in the afternoon, followed by special. I had a parent ask a question, which was, would it be possible to alternate the reader's writer's workshop and specials, so half the class goes off to a special while the other half of the class stays for reader writer workshop, so the teacher can have half as many kids to instruct. And if you did that with two classes together, the special would still have 20 children in it, but each classroom would only have 10 children in it. Is that something that you have thought about, might look at in the future?
We've thought about it, but the thing is that is the time that the children are in special, that is the teacher preparation time. So even no matter how you combine them, you'd still have to have those two teachers. And so, but again, that's a time when there's another pair of hands there. So you ostensibly can pull them out, you can do different things with them, you can have different activities, because you'd still have two adults. So you can make it a group of 10, group of 5 and 15, or do different things with the group.
So you're trying to do something like that.
It's the point of having another adult in the room is the flexibility to use them in the way that's appropriate. As we've said, in first and second grade, we're able to use them. They actually instruct groups. The kindergarten, they might at the beginning of the year start keeping these kids under wrap while they're working with these kids. You know, different. You build up to different kinds of things. Again, like Laura was saying, different teachers use parents different way. Different teachers would use different experiences with parents.
We also have seen this in action. Every one of the teachers here and our reading specialists and all of us have gone to different schools. We have seen Long Day in action, and in spite of the fact that it may look like academics when you look at a schedule, we're watching a morning meeting where the children are all participating and growing together as friends, like a family, and really building up a community in their classroom when they do that morning meeting. Then they transition into doing a reader's workshop. They're at the smart board, but the teacher is still working with two children are doing partner reading, children are doing small group reading with the teacher is doing a mini lesson, the teacher is then conferencing with some children one-to-one. It isn't as broad as you might think unless you were watching it in action. Then there's a snack. And of course the smart board is engaged again, where the teacher is putting something on the smart board that's not only entertaining, but it's also a learning experience. Then it transitions into possibly a writing workshop. And the children are all now sitting at tables actually writing in kindergarten, knowing the routines, because that's all been established in this very seamless kind of a morning where there's a hum of learning, the children are smiling, everything looks very happy. The teacher's happy, the children are happy, they're not rushing, and then they're going into possibly recess or they're doing word work. Even though it looks like they're going continuously from one activity to the other, there is a break in between. And the thing is that it's not rushed. Everyone has time. The teacher has time to talk to the children have time to talk to each other. It's a gift of time for quality instruction.
And consistent routines on a daily basis.
I think what struck all of us at these visitations was just the high level of independence of these very young children, knowing what to do, happily doing it, very excited about, what they could do.
And I think what was key was what they were doing was developmentally appropriate. If it wasn't, they would be asking questions, but it could be as simple as an ABC puzzle or magnetic letters. I mean, it is their play. When you talk about the structured play, literacy could be puzzles. It could be stamping words. It could be cutting and making a book. So it's that kind of thing. And if it's the right match for them, and that's the job of the teacher, then it's enjoyable and they're able to do it independently.
What struck me at the school that I visited was I asked the teacher if the children were older, and she told me 5 of the children had just turned 5 since October, which was surprising to me because they were so capable and happy in what they were doing. And like Marianne said, the consistency of the routines, it was just amazing to watch them. And I did comment to the children that I've never seen anyone so happy. They were all happy.
Well, that brings up an interesting point because the age of the kids has always been a concern of mine, and I continue to be concerned with this because of the late cutoff in the state of Connecticut. And Chris shared an article with us from the New York Times that they are apparently considering October 1st. Why it would be October versus September? I guess that's a compromise of some sort, right? So I was wondering to Noreen and the other kindergarten teachers, especially Noreen, you've been considering that a certain amount of your kids would be 4 years old still in September and into the fall. Would you see any benefit at all to easing into this, like having the first couple weeks just be half days and then add 2-3 full days, and so that, let's say by October 1st, you're on a full 5-day schedule, as far as like the stamina building and all of that? Could you speak to that as to pros and cons of doing that?
In my opinion, it's best just to start.
From day one.
Start from day one, and a good, effective teacher will read the needs of her students, and we will slow down if we need to, and make their learning and their day pleasurable. My opinion is that if we start late, they're starting a routine that's not going to be their routine, and so why even bother? I think if you start right off the bat, establishing those school routines and behaviors, getting the classroom environment, going and working, your class will run more smoothly and it'll be more effective.
And where you did this before, you started day one?
Yes, I worked for Stanford Public Schools. Yep, day one. Yes.
Yeah, a comment and then a question. I've enjoyed listening to the parents and their passion and their enthusiasm and their thoughtfulness for the extended day. I'd have to say we had 2 girls that went through extended day. They enjoyed it so much they did it twice. They had been born in Europe and came back, and their English wasn't very good, and their social skills wasn't very good. But I guess the point I want to make is, this was in 1988, so we've been doing this for 25 years. 25 years.
Yes.
What's changed?
Because we do hear if it's
other
not
things
working.
have evolved, but this is seems to still be the same.
Well, found
The
to some
Common
up
Core
and
State
down.
Standards.
Yeah. It's not just the Common Core State Standards. It's also the leading researchers in the country in reading literacy. What they're saying to us is that children are coming to school as different people. They aren't the same children we had 25 years ago. And you all know that if you have little children around. You know all the children are technologically more advanced than we are. And so as a result, our achievement has to go higher, and teaching has to shift a little bit. Fountas and Pinnell says entering kindergarten have more literacy awareness. They respond to literacy-rich kindergarten curricula. They're learning faster and acquiring more experience in reading and writing. The earlier and higher levels of reading are the results. So expectations are higher and teaching is shifting.
And when I first started, if I had one of his children.
You
The second year.
Thank you for graduating.
All they had to know was the alphabet when they left. So talk about times changing.
Yeah.
They really should know the alphabet when they come.
Right.
So I think that a lot has changed in our society and our world and our children. They're still young, we know that. We care very much about them, that they're 4 and 5, and it does look very academic, but it is done in a very developmentally appropriate way.
Absolutely.
And a lot has changed since then. So I think that program that worked for so many years is frustrated. I think the children are just move so quickly through the day. I think it'll be nicer to talk about things. What do you think? Why do you think we need to know that? Now we're just saying, well, we just have to keep moving forward. And I'm looking forward to that time, which when I had your daughter, we had time.
I was just going to say, I think another difference children, as many didn't go to preschool, and they didn't go for as long, and they didn't do as much. So everything has raised the bar for them because they're so much more capable. And one of our big tasks is to take them and move them as far as they can go. And they're already, when they come to us, they're already where kindergartners were 25 years ago, and et cetera. So I think that's part of the world has changed thing.
And I was going to say, listening to the parents, if I was a parent, I would want to keep this program. I mean, the way it is now. But as an educator, I think the full day program offers more to a child. But as a parent, you just don't like to see your child grow up and be gone all day. You know? So
Until they're teenagers.
I can understand.
Oh, can we make the high school day longer? Is that a possibility?
Cheryl, your budget has 15 summer curriculum days for kindergarten reading. Can you talk a little bit about how you're going to use those days?
We have, we're going to do some staff development this spring, and it will be in the area of literacy. And in the summer, we would use those to talk about the things that are the shared reading, the interactive reading. One of the things that's changed with the Common Core is that in every grade, children have to do more nonfiction texts, even in kindergarten. And we haven't been doing that. Most schools haven't. So it's getting different mentor texts, doing different things with those texts, writing those lessons. But that's a piece of what we would do regardless of what program we're using.
We're approaching the amount of time that we've allotted to this subject. Are there other questions before we wrap this up? We greatly appreciate the amount of time that you've put into this. And we'll reiterate that we appreciate the amount of time the parents have put into it and the amount of time that you've put in to try to address concerns out there. I also want to note that while we've received a number of emails challenging the program, we've also received a number of emails from parents that have been through the program that are supporting a move to full day as well. So the board's going to weigh both sides carefully. We're going to weigh everything that you've said, and we'll be back for one more discussion, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, great.
At this point, we move on to action items, and next on the agenda is the 2013-14 budget, and it's on the agenda for discussed and approved, and our esteemed Dr. Richards is leading the charge.
Thank you. I beg your pardon.
Before you get started, I apologize. For those of you who were not part of our meeting last time, we, as a board, gave Dr. Richards and his team some direction to keep in mind the things that we think are important to the budget, such as small class size, such as focusing on individualized learning, focusing on quality. Yet at the same time, we do realize the constraints of the town, and we ask you to sharpen your pencils and try to get the budget down to the point where it's got a 3 in front of it.
Thank you. I think just to remind people of where we've been, the budget that the administration has proposed has gone through a lengthy development process. As you know, the process begins in October with the development of a set of budget assumptions. And then throughout the fall, what we've done is we've structured board meetings throughout fall, September, right up into December, to feature items that will be key drivers in one way or another of the budget that is being proposed. We had a presentation, as you remember. A very important part of our planning is the enrollment projection work that Ellen Assman does. And I think it's important to note that our budget, our enrollment projections historically have been very accurate. I think the cohort survival model that we've employed has been very effective, so that we begin our planning looking at what our enrollment will be and how that will drive the number of sections that we offer. Related to that is the study that we present, that Tim presents every fall, is the study of class sizes and looking at where our class sizes are, how they fit with respect to our historical patterns in class size and where there are anomalies in class size. But we spend a lot of time with the board looking at class size as a critical component of, as we believe, of quality education. So we're trying to look at, and as you know, one of the challenges we've been dealing with this year is, in the past couple of years, is that our class sizes are on the higher end of our planning, the board's guidelines for planning class sizes. A third activity that an important conversation with the board is the reports on assessment of student learning, and we take a very careful look at how we've assessed what students know and can do in a variety of different ways. A lot of this is geared towards some standardized assessment. I think, as you know, one area that we're doing a lot more work in is looking at formative assessment, which can help us diagnose where kids are and how we need to modify our instruction. Matt spends time and gave a terrific presentation on our technology plan, our 3-year plan, what kinds of initiatives we are proposing for the coming year in technology and how those relate to some of our system priorities. Tim, throughout the fall, has various presentations he's made and staff have made on curriculum revision and development. Some of the new courses that we've looked we are going to put into the curriculum in the coming year, and how those are being developed and the rationale for those new courses. We had a time Ken presented, along with John Murphy, an overview of the maintenance needs in our buildings and how that fits into the budget that we put forth. A critical component, as you know, 80% of the cost of operating a school district is found in salaries and employee benefits, so that the collective bargaining contracts are important and factor into the budget planning, as we have obligations for salaries and benefits based on the contracts that we've negotiated. A major area of work, and Ken has done some, in my view, some fabulous work in looking at our self-funded insurance program. We've made modifications to that. Ken and our advisory committee spend a lot of time looking not only weekly but monthly at our claims experience to see how it's trending. Again, it's a number that can be very volatile given the relatively small number of employees that we insure in our self-funded plan, but that factors into the budget. And then another thing that Ken works with collaboratively with the town is looking at developing a bid for fuel oil, heating oil for the following year. So these are things that happen throughout the fall. And in November, as you know, we meet with the principals and directors on their budget proposals. And then this board, and I appreciate the time we've given it, we've had 3 budget study sessions with the board and the leadership team, the administrative leadership team, on December 20th, January 9th, and most recently on January 31st. And as Mr. Likely mentioned, at our January 31st meeting, the board directed, we had a budget at that time was at 4.39% increase over our current operating budget, and we were asked by the board to come in with a figure below 4%. We have done so, and tonight we wanted to have our Director of Financial Planning and Operations, Ken Post, review the reductions we've made to the administration's budget and respond to your questions before we get into actually having you discuss the budget further and vote on it. As you know, by charter, we have to send the budget to the town at the end of the week. So this is something we've been working on throughout the fall, and tonight the board will be moving the budget forward to the town. So I'd ask Ken to review the reductions we've made to comply with the direction we have received from the board.
Sure, thank you. The first item, of course, is the health benefits claims projection. As I mentioned at our workshop last week, Ed Norgard has lowered his projection by $150,000 for next year, so we've changed that. I took another look at our other employee benefits and was able to reduce that by about $4,500. We had met a couple of weeks ago with the leadership team and had already come up with a few instructional program areas where we thought we could cut back if asked. One of which is curriculum days, where we've reduced the number across the district to bring us down to a level more consistent with previous years. Again, but trying not to negatively affect our higher priority projects. In the area of textbooks, we're deferring the replacement of damaged textbooks in several subjects at the high school. And Bob is going to work very hard to make sure we can get another year's use out of what we have. General supplies, again, we are, and AV instructional materials, we're reducing them back to a level that's more consistent with previous years across the district. Technology, we've identified 3 projects that have been identified as lower priorities than others, and removed them from the plan. They are full school wireless at Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill, and an iPad cart at the high school. In athletics, the athletic department identified a number of supply, material, and equipment costs, and actually also some officials and transportation costs that they're going to reduce for next year. And I was corrected by Bob earlier today because I wrote the statement that we did this without adversely affecting the program, and he said it will adversely affect it. But my intention was that it doesn't affect any of the health and safety areas in the program. So they've come up with that. And then again, based on the board's direction from last week, we were deferring the painting of the field house and the mat storage in the field house. And those also happen to be on our list of items that we would cut if asked to. So making all of those reductions, about $410,000 worth, brings us down to a 3.83% increase.
Any questions?
Is the expense freeze still on now?
Yes.
And will that carry over to the general supply? In other words, the frozen purchase this year, is this going to further damage next year if we're cutting back in these areas?
I don't think general supplies was one of the areas frozen. No. But no, in theory it should not.
For the benefit of the public who hasn't followed this or isn't unaware of this, we instituted, October 1, was it, a spending freeze based on the fact that we were running a significant deficit in our special education program. And so we were faced with, at that time, about a $1 million deficit. I think it's tracked a little bit.
A little bit higher.
It's a little bit higher now.
And it wasn't a freeze on every account. It was on selected
so we put a freeze in
equipment,
to try and
textbooks.
Can you talk a little bit more about the curriculum days that you're reducing and also the technology projects that you're cutting back on?
I can address the technology projects. We were expanding some of the wireless at the schools that aren't going full wireless to offer some more hotspots, so we could have like the cafeteria and the an area in each house or pod that would have wireless, so that we're getting some donations from the Wilton Education Fund that iPad carts. They'd be able to take advantage of wireless in different parts of the building other than always having to go to the Library Media Center. The iPad cart for world language is another one that was cut, which I assume is self-explanatory.
Matt, the hotspots were at Miller Driscoll and Cider Mill?
But that's because they're, and in our 3-year plan, they aren't ready for full wireless.
Right.
They're in the out years, so it seems a logical priority.
And then the reduction in curriculum days. Can you talk a little bit about that?
The simple answer, if I may, in terms of the curriculum day reductions, we are in fact reducing those levels to 12, 13 levels. In other words, last summer. So we have gone through a reprioritization of our projects. We feel comfortable that there's sufficient allotment of days between the 4 schools and at the district level. So in terms of prioritization, our high impact program areas, I think the current proposed allotment after the reduction will meet our needs. And I also think it's important to emphasize the investment we've made in professional development. Curriculum development isn't just about the writing that goes on in the summer. It's about taking your current programs and helping your teachers to effectively implement the curriculum. So that combination of curriculum development in the summer consistent with last year's levels, plus the professional development that's ongoing through consultancy and other training, which remains intact, I think will allow us to move forward next year.
And does it have an impact on our curriculum mapping?
It will. It will. The extent to which a reduction in days does impact our opportunity to expand that work, it does slow it down.
Okay. Can you identify what areas that would be impacted?
That's a question I'd have to follow up. You know, the specificity that you're asking for is something we could get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will the athletic cuts be felt by any one sport, or is that sort of going to be
spread around?
Any other questions? I have a motion to approve the budget as it stands. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the capital bonded project budget. For those of you who don't know, we have 2 pieces to our budget. Our operating budget, which we just approved and will now go to the Board of Finance for further discussion. And then we have our capital budget, which is what gets bonded, such as the bathrooms, renovations on Miller Driscoll when those come along, what have you. That goes to the Board of Selectmen, and we talk with the Board of Selectmen about that middle of next week, I believe.
13.
Well, nothing has changed on the plan since we presented this to you back in, I guess, November it was, or December, except for all the projects in 14-15 dealing with boiler replacement and the conversion to gas are being looked at by Bruce Hampson. The Board of Selectmen has asked him, as a representative of the Energy Commission, to look into this project since Bill Brennan's been negotiating with Yankee Gas, trying to get that project going. And Bruce has identified a number of variables that actually have to be decided upon. So they're engaging. We had a high-level study done with some cost estimates that we've incorporated just for our budgeting purposes, but they really need to bring somebody in to get into a little more detail about, and I think they're going to involve Turner with BVH, who's the outfit who did our initial study, to identify the variables for the boilers and identify the costs and savings and give us the cost-benefit analysis so that we can determine what type of boiler to put in, whether it's better to go dual fuel or dedicated gas. And we really need to see all the numbers first before we can decide which way to go and then put together a plan. So these numbers are in here as placeholders right now, but they will change once all of this study work is done and Turner gives us some good estimates. I don't know if you want me to go into detail about the differences in the boilers or anything like that at this point. Maybe when it's time to start making a decision. When it's time to start making a decision, we can provide more information on that, I guess.
And again, there was a sense that some of our estimates, and again, they were placeholders, were for conversion were not sufficient to the cost of what the conversion will be. And as Ken said, we had assumed going in that if we were making the conversion to natural gas, that we would avoid the cost of replacement of fuel tanks down the line. But if we're going to go to a dual system, that replacement comes back into place. So there's a sense that the numbers will look larger if they decide the engineer's advice is to go to a dual system. There's some concern about how long the gas prices will be so much more favorable to reducing our utility costs over time. So that's an unknown. that they're looking into more carefully.
There are currently a number of school security projects that we have in our operating budget that we just approved. We know that there's the townwide task force on security. Just for people's understanding, it is possible that the town could come back to us and build a larger security project, at which point those pieces could conceivably come out of our operating budget and go into a capital bonded project.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Motion to approve? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. All right, at this point we move on to revisions in the 2013-14 calendar, and it's on for discuss and approve, and it's with Jane Anderson and Dr. Richard. Just as a note, one of the reasons that we brought this back to discuss is because of what we've seen over the last 2 years with storms. It's been incredibly disruptive to the town. I don't think anybody asked for the hurricanes that we had. We're trying to get ahead of that problem. We've received a number of emails from parents saying, look at February, look at April. We've probably received as many saying February as saying April. We're between a rock and a hard spot on this. The one thing that we can't do is predict the weather, but we are trying to provide some level of consistency to parents so they at least know what's happening in the future. And one of the things that I want you to point out is that we're publicizing ahead of time how days would be taken off if we had to have additional Herculean efforts.
Correct.
Thank you.
So you want me to go through it again?
Just briefly.
Not a problem. Okay, so what we've done is when we started this conversation, there were a couple of issues that were asked to be directly addressed, and one of those issues was to look at existing holidays that have traditionally been held as days away from school and to make them into instructional days. One of those was Columbus Day. That was deemed not to be a day to be used, as currently it's for 2 of our 4 bargaining units. That is a contractual holiday. To make that change is certainly something we could do in the future, but it will be something that will need to be negotiated and not something that can be done expeditiously at this point or in our best interest to use of our time. The other questions were about to use days that come in the winter, specifically Martin Luther King, and there are statutory guidelines that prohibit us from being able to use that day as a holiday. We then also were asked to look at the parent-teacher conferences. There is a recommendation at this point to reduce the number of parent-teacher conferences from 5 to 4. The recommendation is to hold those conferences Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday, prior to the Thanksgiving holiday. As was stated at the time, this is something that I had conversations with the teachers union about. While they, as they articulated in their letter to the editor of the bulletin, certainly would request that the 5 days be held, there is a willingness to they were willing to, they understood our point. They saw where the boards, that they were receiving pressure, and they certainly said they could live with 4, but from an educational, foundational standpoint, they really felt it was best to go with 5. That being the case, in an attempt to try to provide some balance, there is a recommendation before you to go with a reduction to 4 days. And certainly a reduction down does not mean that forever in perpetuity, that it needs to be such. It is something then we could look at to see what was the impact of the reduction from 5 to 4. Is there the potential for further reductions, or really have we kind of hit the tipping point? And that's something that we would do with thoughtful consideration and conversation with the WEA moving forward and our administrators before we would make any such further recommendations. Also, we had a discussion about the February vacation. The suggestion put before you is to make February vacation, to convert it from having a full week off to a 4-day week. So using Valentine's Day, the day of love, it's a gift for all. I had to. I did it the last time. I couldn't. It wouldn't be fair for those who weren't here before to miss that. And to then go ahead and convert instructional days to the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st. All of this provides us a wonderful opportunity to move the last day of school up to June 9th. And then if you look what happens then in the calendar, if we have anywhere between 1 to 9 snow days, that would then move, we could then count out, and that would take us to June 20th. At that point, if we had a 10th snow day, we would reduce the school year from 181 days to 180 days. And then, heaven forbid, we have 11 or more, that would take us into the April vacation.
Murphy's Law says that because we're doing this,
We're not going to have a lick of
see
snow.
any hurricanes,
Nothing,
any
nothing.
rain, no
We'll
snow,
be out of
anything.
school on the
And you can thank me
9th that
then.
year.
And kids are going to be out of school on June 10th, and parents are going to be strangling us in the village market,
Right,
saying, "What are we going to do with our kids?" Is there? Well, fortunately for some parents that want their kids home, that'll work out really well. We've obviously taken days away in the past. Have we ever thought about adding them back if we get through the fall and into January?
Given a day like tomorrow,
I know how